Ashlee, it's you and me today.
I love it. Good morning, Summer. How are you?
Good morning. And we are going to be doing, I actually think, a really helpful webinar for the Lady Leaders series about all things admin team. And we're not talking the front office team, which sometimes gets confused for doctors, but we're talking about, executive assistants, personal assistants, administrative assistants. And I like to think, Ashlee, that you kind of set for all of us this thought that we could actually have somebody like you. I feel like you kind of paved the way for so many of us, like, wait, what if we can all have this amazing assistant like you? So I'm really excited to pick your brain today about a little bit more about how you can help doctors really gain traction with the use of assistants. So first, I think I want to dive into just a little bit of your background, which a lot of people know, but kind of give us the background of you with Mark and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so it was 10 years ago. I know, I can't believe, like, Mark and I were just talking like, holy cow, 10 years ago. Anyway, 10 years ago, as many of you know, Dr. Mark Costas, I refer to him as a serial entrepreneur. And even 10 years ago, he was a serial entrepreneur. Constantly starting businesses. He was working as a dentist, starting new practices, running a dental assisting school, selling the dental assisting school across the country. And so he was just needing help. And I was a young, eager person, new grad out of college. I had worked as a CNA, and I was like, listen, that's not my jam. I like to think that was my good karma time I put in as a CNA. But yeah, and so he just needed some help and didn't even fully realize how to utilize me yet. But I was like, listen, like, let's go. I'll help you, $10 an hour, 10 hours a week is how it started. And here we are now.
Wow. That's actually so crazy to me. 10 years ago, $10 an hour, 10
hours
10
a
week. I'm like, and you were like, yeah, the CNA gig is not for me, so I'm going to do that. But so I loved what you said, because I want to back up. You said he didn't even really know how to use me. Like, what did his ad even say? Do you remember?
No, he didn't have an ad. He was a friend of Leslie's
Okay.
friend who was like, oh, we have this dentist friend who needs some help. And I'm like, I need a job. So
yeah. Okay. So when he hired you, you kind of interviewed, he's like, I don't even quite know what I'm going to use you for. I just have a lot of stuff. So he didn't even fully know. Did he give you many parameters or duties or anything?
One of the big things was his mother was working for him in the dental assisting portion and helping to manage the students of the dental assisting school and helping to do licensing for the doctors who purchase the dental assisting school. So I started there and started to learn that piece. But kind of the key to how it fell into everything was, he would come up with a new idea for something and say, hey, I need you to find someone who can make me an ad. And I was just like, I could do that. And mostly it was like, I could just Google things faster than he could. That's the running joke too.
Yeah.
I had the capacity to Google things. He could probably have done it, but yeah. And then it just turned into, one of the keys I look for when I'm hiring assistants for people is someone who are eager to look for tasks like that. Like, hey, I could take that off your plate, right? Like, I can do that for you, because like you said, you don't realize what these people can do for you sometimes. And so a good assistant will be forward thinking and looking for ways that they can help make your life easier. And I just, I was needing more hours. So I'm like, I'm happy to do that. It was kind of a win-win situation.
Sure. Did you actually try to continue your CNA job while doing this, or did you have any other work that you were doing while you did this?
No, I was still looking for another position since this was part-time, but then it quickly became full-time. I was working as a CNA in North Carolina and then had moved to Arizona, and that's how I found, that's how I started working with Mark.
Okay. So, knowing your background, which makes you ridiculously qualified to be able to see the characteristics in others, I think often you're one of the best people that can spot for a doctor who they need and what type of assistant they need. Sometimes I find when I'm talking to doctors, they don't actually even know, and it's not about the title. Is it a executive assistant versus an admin versus a personal? I'm like, it's really a task based. Like, you just need to know what tasks you think you may want to actually give to somebody. Tell me the difference, like when you're listening to doctors, between whether they need maybe more of an executive assistant, a personal and admin, or kind of a, ability to have somebody who can do a little of everything.
Totally. Yeah. So personal assistant is someone I describe as, they're really helping you with personal type tasks. So, they're maybe making doctor's appointments for you. They're making sure, presents for family get ordered, or running errands for you, dry cleaning, or ordering groceries, maybe a little bit of house management stuff too, just kind of making sure that maybe the landscaper gets called, or, something, the plumber, kind of more personal tasks driven around your personal life. Admin assistant I describe as somebody who's working in the business, but not necessarily front desk. They're not patient forward. They're maybe someone who's helping to track marketing ROI. They're tracking receipts, or doing spreadsheet maintenance, or whatever it might be within the office. And then executive assistant I kind of describe as being a little bit of both, and kind of at a higher level. So maybe they're helping you keep track of information for your taxes. They know like where the details for the life insurance policy are. They know, kind of at a higher level. They're very forward thinking. They're very anticipation of needs is something that I'm always talking about when I'm working with assistants. It's about learning to anticipate the needs of your employer, and just function at that higher level. And so like you're saying too, sometimes it doesn't fit into one of these roles. And a lot of times it can be a blend. The more success you will have as you're looking for these people though, is to clarify the role. I know we just talked about some people don't have this role clarified, but the more that you can start to clarify that role, the easier it is to find someone, because they're not like, this is not what the job was described as,
Mm-hmm.
So, and even it's just about communication and making sure that, you are communicating. Sometimes it's, hey, I don't have this clearly defined. I need someone who can be flexible and roll with it too. So
Right.
anyway, it's kind of a, it can be a blend of all three. It can fall into one of those three buckets. And it's very, very personal to you and your needs and what you're looking for.
For sure. Well, and I will tell you, I started like Mark, 5 years ago with Andrea, that I was like, and once again, it was a friend of a friend who just said, hey, I had actually hired this person for the position. She started doing it and realizing like, it's not my jam, but I have a friend who I genuinely think it's her jam. And I did the same thing where I'm like, Andrea, I don't really even know what I need. I just know I'm kind of a mess everywhere. Yeah. I didn't even have a way to figure out what I needed. But, what I want to be able to give people who are listening is, I tend to get sometimes a little bit of pushback from doctors who are like, I don't think I need one yet. I just don't think I need one. Or I get a lot of, people who say, well, you know what, I can do it. I can do it pretty quickly. It just seems like a waste of money. It feels a little bit like I'm a diva and I need somebody to do that kind of stuff. And my thought process is, how do you talk to doctors about why one is helpful? When do they even need it? When do you suggest like, hey, this might truly help you scale your business, give you really good balance back? Like, how do you know when they need one? And how do you guide them through like that process of not feeling like it's a luxury, diva type thing?
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because that's so common, is I don't need a personal assistant. I'm just a dentist, it's not I'm not a celebrity thing. And that's not what this is. It's just it's a tool and a role that for someone just to truly help take things off your plate day to day. When I'm doing consults with doctors about whether or not this is a good fit for them, I ask them to tell me about their day-to-day life. What does it look like? What time are you getting up? What time are you getting to the office? And just have them describe to me, really think about your day and think about those parts of the days that maybe you dread. Maybe the things that you're like, oh, I have to, where you're noticing like first thing in the morning in the drive in the car, you're like, oh, I also have to get the sprinklers fixed. The paint is chipping off of, it's getting people to start to think about those things that are stacking up, and realizing that it doesn't have to be you for you to get these things done, and that peace of mind, if you can delegate those things to just open your mind up to have a quiet ride in the car, is almost priceless.
Yes. I actually tell doctors the exact same thing. I say, when you look through your day, and I'm not going to ask you to sit here and like time journal out every 15 minutes. Because then sometimes that makes you more stressed out.
Yeah, that's another thing you have to do.
Yeah. So I'm like, instead, just task oriented. Think to yourself through the course of the day. I say the exact same thing. What are the tasks that you're like, this is not something that I do amazingly well that nobody else can do? Mm-hmm. And if you can say to yourself, truly, like, this is a task that for less than $25, I could genuinely give to somebody. I will tell you, one of the admin people, as an example, one of the admin people you hired for me, who I love, she, my house is a money pit. It's like, it falls apart all the time. I joke that if a strong wind comes, I think it's going to blow down. But I was like, oh my gosh, shoot, Amanda, I have no heat in my house. I don't even have time to figure out what to do. I sent a text. It was fixed that day. I didn't think about anything. She just had it done, fixed. Well, then I said, Amanda, they were so amazing. Is there any way you could send them a Starbucks gift card? Done. So like, I joke that things like that not only solve your problems, but help you to actually be a more thoughtful human being. That is something that I find doctors want. They want to be able to have that, but they just don't even think that that's something that's delegatable. Sure. That took me a whole total of probably 20 seconds. And Amanda was on it, done that day. Like, that freedom for me was huge. Totally. And like, what an amazing thing to be able in my community to have this company be like, wow, thank you for the gift card. We appreciate that you appreciated us. So I tell doctors, as you're thinking about those little things, and I love what you said, the house, needing to be repainted because your spouse is like, when are you going to get on that, or whatever, that can be delegated. But start thinking through the tasks that are happening. The other thing, like I said, and that's more of the personal assistant side, which often that can be just a few hours a week. And I've heard people say groceries, mail runs, house tasks, just things like that.
Returns. A lot of times people buy things online and you need to make those returns and you have a stack of boxes piling up and you're like, I just can't get to UPS to make that return. That's my thing, is I always have returns to make.
Me too. Yep. Believe it or not, mine is the mail, which I used to feel diva-esque, but our post office is open 8:30 to 4:30. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get there. Yeah. And then standing in the line for 45 minutes to get a box, I'm like, why would I ever want to spend my time there? Things like that, doctors just don't even always think about. The other thing that I look for on the admin side of that is when you're kind of going through tasks of your front office, if it's repetitive, redundant, and consistent, and somebody else could be truly outside the organization or come in and work, say for us, we have a little glass house. Melissa comes in and does those. She sits in the glass house and she does the redundant, consistent tasks that honestly are super easy, like credentialing doctors, negotiating a few things, creating our little welcome bags, things that I don't really want my front office to be spending their time, like they need to be with the patients. Sure. I don't want them, doing that. I have somebody create the social media posts, and I think we're probably going to have you give some resources, I'm guessing, of things like that, of tasks and things like that people can delegate out. But doctors, often you need one before you even know you need one, is what I find. I just talked to a doctor yesterday that two little kiddos, and she said, my life is just chaos. And the first thing I think of is, I'm like, Ashlee, I'm like,
all the chaos. Let's do it.
Yes. And I told her, I said, all I want you to do is task journal out a couple of these things, because I think you could give yourself quickly an additional 2 hours a week of just those little tasks. So when do you need one? Start looking at your tasks, and I bet quickly you'll find 2 hours a week, at least, to 5 of those exact things, either for your admin team or yourself. So let's say a doctor's like, all right, fine. I relinquish the idea that I'm a diva. I can see how it would be helpful. Where do they begin? What does the ad look like? Where do they place ads?
Sure. So like I said, the more the task journal, it helps a lot, and or in those types of things. And you don't have to, like we talked about, do time journal, but just start thinking about those tasks. That's starting to create the base for your ad, and it's starting to think about even a percentage. I like to put a percentage of is this like 80-20 personal admin? Is this like is there availability to work from home? But that task list is going to be the base for your ad. The good thing about these roles, we talk about hiring, like, oh, my heart hurts for everyone trying to hire a hygienist or even, back office dental. Like, the good thing is there are so many people who fit into these roles, these admin, personal assistant, and executive assistant roles, who come from so many different backgrounds, that you just have so many more options for these specific roles. So most of the time I'm placing ads on Indeed. That's kind of the standard at the moment. My little alert there too is just be very cautious with Indeed, because they try to tell you that you have to have a minimum spend, but their wording is tricky. So you just be sure that you're reading lines very carefully before you place your Indeed ads. Anyway, sidebar. And then as we're placing ads, one of the things that I absolutely insist on for these roles is, because you have people coming in from so many different backgrounds and so many different, different styles of work, what I'm doing is skills testing them. They have to pass a skills assessment with me, because it might look good on paper, but because there's so many, having people do the skills assessment will, one, a lot of people wean themselves out by just refusing to take the skills assessment. If you're not willing to take a skills assessment, then I probably don't want you for a position anyway. And then B, if they're not able to, I use the example that I had someone come in for a working interview for an admin assistant position. She sat down and I was like, hey, can you email me that thing? And she goes, how do you attach a file to an email? And I was like, thank you for your time. Like, I do not have the capacity to train at that level. So I use a thing called Criteria Corp and Hire Select to do my skills assessments. It is kind of expensive per year, but man, the amount of time and money that you save by not hiring someone who is a slacker is priceless again.
Yep. So we're exactly the same. Now, granted, I have you hire a lot of but I will tell you, Andrea, for like positions when we're looking for somebody very specifically within our town, I know this sounds crazy, we have a runner for our offices that, we really just needed somebody for 5 hours to truly make the boxes for the dental assisting school, mail those out, like a runner, like literally that's all they do. FedEx packages, super small. When she made those ads, she does the exact same thing. Indeed, she says the same thing. She's like, look very carefully, because they can make it sound as if you need to pay way more than you do. So she does Indeed, and then we do Criteria Corp testing as well. And we just pay the yearly fee because we just tend to hire. And I will say, if you're like us, the cool thing is you start to dial in pretty quickly with those tests, very specific personality traits that you look for. And you're like, this isn't going to work for you. Probably you're going to hate this position. Yep. So I think that's all really beneficial. And I'm sure we can kind of put some links for people to, get some more information there. But what do you suggest when it comes to each of those roles? You've figured out the ad, you need an administrative assistant, or maybe you need an administrative and a PA, a little bit of both. Where do you start how do you put salary, hours, like what looks good on an ad, do you think, for those?
Sure. Yeah. My kind of rule of thumb that I tell people is that for these positions, our in-person workforce has definitely changed since 2020, right? Like, the world has changed since COVID. So everything is higher and at a higher rate. But what I tell people as a general rule of thumb is that, someone who's a solid front office person in your area, what are you paying someone who would be a starting front office person in your area? It's about the same as that. So, there's a big range depending on if you're in New York City versus Shreveport, Louisiana. But, you're on average $20 an hour. That might be a little high in some areas, but yeah, that's kind of what you're looking for. And also you can put in there, we're starting at 10 hours a week. There's a possibility for increased hours. Or if you're even willing to say like, listen, I can guarantee 10 hours a week in some capacity, then you're going to get more attention there as well. But yeah, I guess, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think a lot of times I hear doctors say, I don't know how to even write up the ad. I don't even know what I'm looking for. So we talked about creating your task list first. That becomes the ad. I don't know what to even pay them. I think that's a beautiful rule of thumb. And I will tell you that actually holds pretty darn true, at least where I live. And if you can give them kind of a guarantee of like, hey, it's going to be 5 to 10 hours every week. I agree that we have found that that's more helpful than saying it's flexible. Because what we found with that was when we said it was too flexible, thinking that maybe that would garnish more attention, it actually bit us in the booty, because then when we needed them, they were like, well, I already have 14 other jobs. I thought this was flexible. I can't get to you within the day.
Exactly.
Well, I just, and I told Andre over the years, I'm like, I think that's because we just didn't set the expectation of Tuesdays and Thursdays from this time to this time is really what we need, so I think, be careful with the language that you use, because expectations get set within that ad and things like that, or you may attract somebody that honestly can't fulfill what you're wanting.
Totally.
So I think we talked about ads, hours, how much, to potentially pay, personality, and, working tests to be able to use. I agree. If they don't want to fill that out, you probably don't want them. For me, what was really important was like making sure, yes, tech savvy. And I don't think that ability to Google is like something I can say, but not to be silly. Like it really is for me. Like, can you literally be forward thinking to Google something? And truly, like Amanda's brilliant at it. Like she just can figure out something.
She's a master Googler.
Yeah. And I'm just using her as an example, but like, she comes up with solutions and she does it all online and super quick. That's, for me, a big deal. Another thing that's a big deal for me is if you're going to have them do travel, then make sure they travel.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody who doesn't actually ever travel try to make your travel plans, because they genuinely don't even understand the difference. Like for me, time is money.
Yeah. So if there's 2 stops, you don't want 2 stops, and you don't want to go to Missouri to get to California, let's think through this.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times they'll naturally go towards, don't you want the most cost savings?
Yes.
And I'm like, I want to fly out of Eagle and I know it's going to cost me 300 more, but that's going to save me 6 hours in that day.
Totally.
That's worth more than that. But that's something that just to think about, depending on what those tasks are, who you potentially want to hire.
Totally.
Well, let's pretend now, Ashlee, you've got the great candidates in, you've decided you're hiring the specific one. Another barrier for doctors is I don't even have time to onboard them. I don't know how to onboard them. What do you suggest with these doctors?
To make time, like I mean, it sounds kind of harsh, but like it's like any position. I mean, in our whole Lady Leader series, we've talked about how important that onboarding process is for any position, and this is the same. This is an investment. This position is an investment, and the more that you can, even if you're just carving out like an hour, like in the beginning to powwow once a week, and it doesn't have to be an hour every single day, like let's powwow. I teach my clients to do what I call brain dump meetings, like just get everything that you have to get done like up on a whiteboard or on a sheet, and then allow the assistant to start helping you prioritize. One of the things that's really helpful, like with any position, especially if you've never had this position before, is what is your goal with this position? Is your goal to when you have a personal assistant, to have more free time with your family? Is it so that you can have more structured CEO time? Help them understand what the goal is for you in this role, and then they can help to execute. You're like, here's the goal. They can help you then get there. Like, hey, I see you're scheduling, over your CEO time, but like, I'm actually going to move that doctor's appointment so that you still have your CEO time, or that, I see your wife's birthday is at, on Friday. Let's make sure that you're out by 4 o'clock, help them understand what your goals are, and then allow them to kind of run with it. So you do have to dedicate some time to onboarding if you want this to be a success. If you're like, I don't really know what to do, but they're just floating over there and they're like, I've had that happen too. And this person's just not working out. I'm like, you never meet with them.
Mm. Yep. So my answer, of course, is going to be exactly the same, which is when doctors tell me like, I don't have time. I'm like, well, you don't have time now.
Right.
So tell me, how do you see, as you're trying to grow, scale, be with your family, are your kids getting less busy? Is your family getting less busy? Is your office getting less busy? Like, no offense, but you're only going to get more and more busy. So this is never going to cost less than right now. So how do you figure out, because what you're really trying to do is, as everybody knows, I love to say, like, you're trying to build the catapult instead of like, you're trying to slow down to be able to speed up. And so figure out, like, build the catapult with this person. And it may take a few times to really meet and have them understand your brain and start to see what done and done well looks like for you. But if you're not spending that time, I see the exact same thing. Well, they just, they couldn't meet my expectations. They weren't very good. And I'm always like, well, I genuinely think they just didn't understand fully what they tried. They were truly trying to figure out what you wanted. So I think usually the bad experience happens, and then that usually makes doctors be like, see, it's just not going to work. I think that really great, add as best you can the expectations. And that could be, I'm going to be really honest. Like Mark and I said to you and Andrea, I'm going to be honest. I really don't know. I don't know exactly, what I'm going to need, how many hours, but this is what I'm thinking. This is kind of where I did say, this is what I'm trying to create. This is what I am wanting to have happen. You can then even build from that, because you're setting the expectations of, I don't quite know, but I'm willing to kind of work with you on a weekly basis to help get things clear. Are you cool with that?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So yeah.
And it's important too, especially if you're starting with just a few hours a week, that you're realistic with those hours. Like, I was talking to an assistant and she was like, yeah, she texted me at, 8 p.m. on a Sunday. I can't get to it at 8 p.m. on, you can't expect that these hours, if you're, if you have the capacity, there are some people who can hire like a full-time on-call assistant, and then you're looking at $50,000-$60,000 a year. And if, you need that much kind of attention to detail, that's something we can totally do. If you just need a few hours a week, let's be realistic with that role. And when they're available, these are people too. And you can't just be like, oh, well, I said, 10 hours and one of those hours is at 10 p.m. on Sunday. No, be realistic.
Yep. Well, and it's funny you say that. Be realistic about the communication means, period. So I have a team of assistants, and I actually went through each one of them and I'm like, how do you like to communicate? Do you like email? Do you want text? Hey, and then I set the precedence. Guys, I'm going to be honest. Often I am up at 4:30 in the morning. And at 4:30 in the morning, I'm going to very likely send an email. Here's what I want you to know. When you see that timestamp, I do not expect a response back. I want you to know I had to get it out in that email so I didn't forget my train of thought and what I was trying to do. I need you to know you're not going to get to it until 8:02 probably. Yeah. So I think really because I agree, sometimes we have these unrealistic expectations of what they can get done in the time allotted. And if you're not really clear about, like I said, Tuesdays and Thursdays from this time to this time is when I do need you to be available. 9 to 11, sure. I need you to be available for me. That's great. That's fine. At least they know. And hey, like for me, I always send out a Sunday weekly email, I call it, to my team of assistants, just because I like to go through all the different things. Then they all respond back on it in different colors. What they've been working on, hey, here's my update from my part of it, just to keep us all on track and kind of all focused in the same direction. Yep. But I confirm, like, okay, guys, is this going to be helpful? Is this a mode of communication that works for everybody? So you do have to kind of think through not just when to communicate, but how to communicate.
Sure.
Some people are awesome with text. Some people are terrible, I found. Some people are awesome with emails. Some are better with phone calls.
Right.
That's my least preferred method, just because
I'm a millennial. I hate phone calls.
I'm like, Lord have mercy. I'm like, that just, I don't even have time for that. But unless it's going to truly expedite it much quicker. So I think that's important as well. What I will say is, you know, for me, there needs to be a level of, as you're growing, as you're learning to use these team members, using them really efficiently, there has to be accountability. But by the way, it does go on both sides.
Yes.
And I think that's important is, you know, they aren't necessarily at our beck and call. You know, they really are trying to make our lives easier. But, you know, what do you tell doctors to kind of watch out for as that position's growing when it comes to growth trajectories, time requirements, you know, yeah, what do you tell doctors for that continued accountability and expectations?
I mean, I think, you know, one of Dr. Mark Costas's Sexy Six books, you know, that every mastermind member has to read is, and one of them is Extreme Ownership. You know, it's like you're saying, you know, it goes both ways and it's on both sides. So anytime that you know, as these positions grow, it's about constant communication and you taking ownership of that communication. Like you said earlier, you know, it's extreme ownership. If even, you know, if they're doing a task wrong, you know, it's, did I give this person enough information? You know, maybe they did book a flight and did I tell that, you know, maybe I didn't tell them that, you know, these are the things I prefer. And like you said, it's, you can hire for that type of thing, but it's just about consistent communication. Like, hey, you know, it's been 6 months. We're here, we're at these amount of hours. How are you feeling about it? And what are the type of tasks you like to do? I always encourage people to ask that question, because if you put someone where they like to be, they're going to work a lot harder than on the things that they don't want to do. Like you said, with your first assistant, they were like, this just isn't my jam, you know, but definitely it's Andrea's jam. So
Yeah.
it's just about, I think, having consistent communication and being open to feedback. You know, this is a position that you want to hear how you are doing. Can you delegate in a better way? Is there something they need from you to be more successful in these roles? And just, you know, be open to hearing that and growing with, you know, growing this position as well.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I kind of sat down and I did with Andrea specifically was, and I actually started with her because then she kind of oversees the admin team for me. But I said, let's really look at what your growth plan is. Where do you love growing? Where do you kind of not love growing?
Yep.
And as we kind of sat down and she wrote out per entity, like this is kind of the growth plan that I could see per entity and how I could be helpful, that helped me do exactly that. She then went and kind of went to the admin team and was like, let's do the same thing for you guys. What was fascinating, you know, to that point was when she just asked that question, what do you love? What do you not love? What do you want to grow in? Jillian, who you know, she loved a task that we were trying to take from her plate because we assumed it was beneath her.
And she loved doing it.
She loved it. She loved going on Kajabi and like helping edit content. Well, for me, I was like, wow, who would want to do that? That can be like outsourced to something even, you know, something more simplistic. She literally, her words were, do you guys not think I'm very good at it? And we were like, no, we think you're great at it. We honestly assumed that it was something you didn't want to do. And that was a horrible assumption. So you're right. Like you can't really assume anything. You have to instead just have the conversation. So I think figuring out where they want to grow, where they actually do want to, you know, excel in certain things, where they want to try. I've been amazed at what their brains can do that I never even thought of. Jillian is a beautiful example of that, you know. So, you know, I think we've kind of already discussed this, but what do you see as the biggest hindrances for doctors to try to have an assistant, you know, onboard one successfully, continue to utilize one to where they can grow? Where do you see kind of the biggest hindrances along that path when you're working? Because you work with both sides, the doctor, and you get to hear from the assistant. What have you found to be the biggest hindrances along that path?
I mean, I know we've just harped on this, but it's communication. It's on both sides. I was talking to an assistant yesterday who had some frustrations, and I'm like, have you talked to them about this? Oh, well, no. I'm like, you
I
gotta
don't know. Yeah.
you gotta be willing to have the conversation, and but what's the quote? It's like, you're only as successful as
Most
your
uncomfortable conversations.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it is uncomfortable sometimes to advocate for yourself on both sides. As an assistant, like, they need to advocate for their time and availability and their skill set. Like, Jillian was doing, like, listen, I love doing this and I'm good at it. Sometimes it can be scary to bring those things up. And as a employer too, you need to, communicate and advocate for what this ideal role is. I find it helpful too, it's like kind of therapy 101, talk in like more general statements of, hey, my ideal person in this position is consistently checking my calendar for any conflicts each week, instead of like, I really wish you would do this. It's learning to soften your language. Emotional intelligence is an important skill, whether or not it seems kind of fluffy and unimportant to some. It's a very useful skill. And so communication and utilizing skills of emotional intelligence, I think, is kind of hindrances of any leader, to be totally honest, in any position.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so true. Well, and this is just a tough one, I think, for doctors, because it is so unlike the people that are working around them daily, every day. I think that that's part of what, if I'm really honest, holds doctors back, is it feels like such a foreign concept to them. And because it feels so foreign, they just don't even think, they could actually successfully utilize one, hire them. And I almost wonder sometimes if they're just afraid of their own almost lack of communication. They know it about themselves. And so it's like, no, but then they'll be the first ones to be like, I'm just so inundated with too many tasks, or I can't get anything done. So I think for me, I think it almost always starts with discussing with the doctors, like, how long are you willing to continue doing this? And like I said, if you're going to, it's a choice. So if you want to keep living like this, if you want to keep having, I think, the same level of, low level tasks around you that for you are frustrating, if you're not willing to make a change, then go ahead and just keep doing what you're doing, but then recognize it's a choice. Because there is tons of opportunity out there for somebody to help that wants to help. So it has to become first the doctor recognizing, like, okay, I'm ready to potentially have a different perspective on outside help, is kind of my first thing. Then they have to task journal, like we discussed, to kind of wrap things up. Like, they have to task journal and figure out, on the drive to work, what am I thinking about? When I'm sitting in the office and I've got the 14 million sticky notes all over my desk, rip them off and categorize them as, these are things that I could delegate out for 25 or less an hour, and probably somebody could do them really well. After you've done that, it's creating that ad. Hey, these are the tasks I'm looking for. This is the hours I could guarantee probably per week. Don't let that scare you, doctors. A lot of times I'm like, just do the math. Worst case scenario, you may overpay by $100 or something. Like,
yes,
don't let that scare you. Because a lot of times they're sitting there like, I can't keep them busy for exactly 10 hours. I'm like, can you do it for 7? Like, things, I promise you, as you start utilizing them, you will be able to give them those tasks. So you place the ad, you really have set kind of that set hours, dollar amount. You bring somebody in, whether it be through criteria corp testing. When you hire them, you let them know, I'm new to this. And part of that is what I think is hard for doctors. They don't know. They're used to being total problem solvers and knowing things. So they're going to have to be a little vulnerable with that emotional IQ of saying, hey guys, I don't fully know what I'm doing here. But this is my plan. This is my goal. And I need you to hold me accountable to meet with you every week, 1 hour or whatever, to kind of go through, are we getting closer to that goal, and anything I need tweaked. And then moving from that, just stick with that weekly meeting with them, whatever modality works and works well. But then be accountable on both sides, hold them accountable, but you, doctor, be accountable for, really ensuring, is your communication there? Have you updated expectations as far as tasks? Have you been clear? Which is my kryptonite. Everything's in my head and I'm like, don't you see what I'm seeing? Well, of course I don't. So I think being really honest with yourself of, are we delegating well? Are we delegating it clearly? And then checking back in. Each of those pieces, starting with just the mindset of the doctor, is what I see kind of gets in the way of really successfully utilizing them. And then that bums me out. And I don't know about you, because I'm like, like you then went back to not having one, being frustrated, missing out on your family time, missing out with your kids, working so hard in the practice and feeling like you're just never quite getting traction anywhere. So it always bums me out. So I think, it starts with that mindset. And then really there is kind of a progression of how to utilize them. And I think, Ash, like I do tell doctors, you can do that yourself. You can. However, what I will say is, Ashlee, you have truly created something really special that I think can help doctors. I think expedite that process and just make it feel better. I would love to kind of close this out with you just telling everybody kind of what you do, how you do it, and how they can be a part of you helping them find their own assistant.
Absolutely. So that's funny. We just talked about like finding the things that someone loves to do. This is something I love to do. So I mean, yes, I have my day job with Dental Success Network. And however, I have started a little side gig where I am helping dentists and entrepreneurs to find the right personal administrative or executive assistant. I know that one of the biggest hurdles is the writing of the ad, is the placing the ad. Now I have to screen them, and like you're saying, it's all totally doable. Everyone can do this. However, if it feels like that's another overwhelming task that you have to do, that's something that I help with now. So I work with business owners. We'll create the ad. I have an assistant now, and we will screen candidates. We will put them through skills assessments, and then they do a quick little Zoom interview with me. I did a calculation, and over the last 2 years, I've done over 400 interviews. So I like to think that I have a pretty good gut feeling about people, and I can tell you, hey, this is the person that you need. So, or I'm like, nope, that wasn't it, so, rely on me and that expertise to help save you time. Then once we, then I present the business owner with these little packets of information that has their resume, their skills assessments, the little video interview with me, and then they get to decide who they want to meet one-on-one with. And then, we talked about too, you can also do working interviews. So that's something that some people choose to do too, having someone do a virtual working interview. And these positions, usually it can be virtual and maybe some type of research task, like you mentioned. You can have them do a working interview. And then once you do decide to hire the person, I also created 4 weeks of training based on my time as an executive assistant. So, we go through what it's like to be in this role, what it's like to, how you can be a assistant who is constantly, what did I say earlier? Assessing needs.
Forward thinking and
yes, forward thinking. Yes, exactly. Anticipating needs. That's cool. Forgot my own verbiage. Anyway, anticipating needs and how you can really thrive in this role. They also do some exercises, and I give them feedback on how to present the information more effectively, how to Google search, more efficiently. And so they go through 4 weeks of training with me. So that's the program that I offer. If it does feel like someone is if it does feel like a daunting task, if you do feel like you need this person, but you don't know where to start, that's something that I absolutely love, or it's it feels kind of like a dating service. And I love when I put the right people together and they're like, oh, I'm so happy I found my, Amanda or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And to watch business owners, just the sense of relief that happens. They just have this overwhelming relief of the things that they're no longer in charge of. Oh, it just makes my heart so happy. I do have here, we'll share it in the chat too. I do have a list of things that where do I even start? So this is my what can I delegate list. So you can start by looking at these sheets, and it is, it kind of breaks down just a ton of different ideas to get your brain flowing on the types of things that you can delegate. I send this out to potential clients and they just start highlighting. It's even easier than starting to build their task list. You can start here. I've had people send it back to me and they have things written all over the edges too. And I'm like, perfect.
Yep.
That's what I want.
Yep.
So I'll put that on the chat as well. And then if you are watching this in another capacity, you can scan that little code and then fill out the form, and then you will get that in an email as well, or you can reach out to me via my phone number or email. But yeah, I absolutely love finding the right assistants for people and watching them get this relief, or be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to go to every single basketball game with my son now, or I get a little emotional because it's so fun.
Well, so we're such girls probably, but I was like, I have like chills because I'm like, that's exactly how my life has been. Like, once I recognize the power of these administrative, assistants, personal assistants, what's crazy is how much they love their jobs. And unless they're lying to me, I'm like, I think they genuinely feel almost like part of my family and part of almost they really are part of our team. Our whole team here loves them just as much as, they came for our holiday party because it made sense. They're in Denver, so they're not far away. But, they really do become part of our team. They've made my life so much easier. The thing that I've seen is I've been able to scale to heights that I just definitely would never have been able to. So that's when I'm like, it just hurts my heart when people feel like it can't happen. I don't deserve this. It's too expensive. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, especially, people with kiddos and things like that. I'm like, this will change your life. And what I can say is, and obviously, Ash, you would never ask this of me, but like, truly, you have found 2 of mine and they're awesome. Like, they literally just dropped right in. And Andrea was like, are you kidding me? This is how easy it can be. She was like, I've been trying to do stuff on my own. And you made the process super easy, and you found really fantastic people. So I'm grateful. I can't say enough. Actually, you're going to be helping me later this morning as I talk to you.
I have another call to find you more help.
I know. I'm like, I need more. It's so valuable to me. So, and you really are so ridiculously qualified. It's almost become like I joke like it's going to be a meme sometime of, I want my Ashlee.
That's the goal someday.
It's like, I want my Ashlee. Where's my Ashlee? So, well, I want to thank you so much for what you've done for me, what I know you've done for so many doctors. It's truly life-changing for sure. And I hope that people who are listening to this can maybe just start to think about things differently. Look at the resources that you're putting on the link, and reach out to you. Just see if this is truly something that I think could be helpful. So, any final words?
No, again, I just truly enjoy this type of work. I know it can seem overwhelming to people and seem like just such a foreign concept, but man, to watch how it changes people's lives, and it seems like, what, an assistant's going to change my life? No, like, an assistant will change your life. I have a client too that were like, no, it helped my marriage. Like, you don't understand. So it's just it's just such an incredible tool and powerful thing. So Thank you, Summer. I appreciate you joining me too. And I love our Lady Leaders series as always. And thank you again.
Yes, we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.